Lake St. Clair is large, but not large enough to be considered another one of the Great Lakes. It is extremely key to the other 5 major lakes in the system and the transportation that occurs between them. The entire landscape and utilization of the lake has changed greatly over the years. The body of water often freezes over in the winter, providing enjoyment such as ice fishing, sailboarding, and snowmobiling. Many boats are completely taken out of the water and winterized in the fall of the year. Boating takes a rest. The area becomes a cold, beautiful paradise. But in the spring, when warm weather arrives, nature takes over. Water starts to flow, and all types of wildlife can be seen. Historically, Lake St. Clair has been a shallow body of water with marshland surrounding the shoreline and an abundance of wildlife. If sailing a vessel from the upper Great Lakes to the lower Great Lakes, or vice versa, one has to travel across Lake St. Clair. Various people have settled here over the years. Native Americans found hunting, fishing, and agricultural endeavors boundless in this natural, pristine environment. And for many years, utilized the area's resources and traded goods. In the 1500s, many varieties of people arrived in the area. People visited many times from faraway lands. Changes quickly took place in the vicinity. These new people started to inhabit the countryside.
Fortunately for us, we have quite a bit of documentation from our local historians, and we have good records of maps from the locations. This should help with locating where the dives should actually occur in the lake, and then help with the evidence to support the stories that we're trying to tell of the people who lived in these communities and in these villages that were established here on Lake St. Clair.
By the late 1600s, what is now called Canada and the United States were emerging as new political and economic powers in the Lake St. Clair area. Each sought out usage of this rich territory. Trappers discovered an abundance of beaver and developed an area fur trading industry. Wild rice, game, and all the natural necessities of a good life were available in the surrounding lake region. Soon, French missionaries and explorers arrived and more accurately charted the lake system with the help of Native Americans. Within 100 years of French rule, England challenged the right to occupy the region, and turmoil and tension ensued. Native Americans, the French, and the English all struggled for dominance of the lake area. Because early settlers were dependent on water for transportation of goods, it was necessary for farmers to have access to the water. By the 1700s, ribbon farms were developed. Narrow parcels, sometimes a mile long, fronted on Lake St. Clair and the Clinton River to necessitate the shipping and receiving of their goods, and provided crop irrigation. Lake St. Clair was a shallow lake, especially near the shorelines. The most difficult area to navigate was in the north end, known as the Flats. The flats had numerous channels, swift currents, sandbars, and obstacles that blocked early travelers in this delta. The largest freshwater delta in the world is located here. Any ships that navigated the flats or delta area needed to know the waters and have the ability to select the correct channel to go in and out of Lake St. Clair. Judging the right time and currents for sailing was crucial. Dredging out the channels was an answer to the problem.
Back in the early days of the sailing ships trying to get between Lake St. Clair and Lake Huron, they had to pass the bumps that were known as the St. Clair Flats. There were 3 different channels that were used, but really the North Channel tended to be the most popular just because it was the deepest. And when I say deep, maybe 6 or 7 feet at most. For large vessels, this is kind of tough. And early on, there weren't the great charts that we have today. It was all very much done by kind of word of mouth between captains and some really, really early charts that were developed. Dredging of the channels of the St. Clair Flats affected both the commercial sail vessels, the power vessels that eventually came along, and arguably it affected how the flats themselves operated as a drainage system.
People were settling in the area, and trades were starting up. Trades like ship repair, sawmills, fishing, shipbuilding, farming, and barrel making, to name just a few. In 1835, before Michigan was even a state, a small community was created called Belvedere. It was located on the northern banks of the Clinton River tributary. An early settler, James Conger, envisioned a great city built here between the upper and lower Great Lakes system. The settlement continued to grow, and within a short time, a wind-powered sawmill, a grist mill, general store, hotel, bank with its own currency, and private homes were all built. But most importantly, a dock out into Lake St. Clair was constructed. Steamboats were built to move up and down the Clinton River. In 1837, a charter was created to actually operate a railroad in Michigan, connecting Saginaw, Belvedere, Pontiac, and Mount Clemens. An attempt to create a canal from the mouth of the Kalamazoo River on Lake Michigan to the mouth of the Clinton River on Lake St. Clair was proposed. Unfortunately, this canal venture was never completed because of railroad competition. One problem which the Native Americans and a Catholic priest had warned the people of Belvedere about was high water and flooding in this area. Lake St. Clair was subject to drastic fluctuations in water levels, created by variation in the amount of water flowing from the upper Great Lakes. The Clinton River would also overflow its banks. Even back in 1836, high water was already threatening the town of Belvedere. This flooding also helped increase the miserable mosquito population. By 1838, most of Belvedere was flooded, and the original Conger family was the only family still living in town. Soon, they also had to leave. The final blow came in 1882, when a spark from a steamboat caught what was left of Belvedere on fire. The Noble Odyssey Foundation a unique local maritime research institution and hands-on youth training organization, was selected for its expertise to do scientific underwater research of the remains of the underwater town of Belvedere and the early church of St. Felicity. Both sites are underwater and have been lost for over 170 years.
Well, what we're trying to do here is to document a really interesting time in the history of this area when it was transitioning from a frontier to kind of a modern industrial commercial waterway. And so we have two sites that disappeared in the process of that transition. Most of this is underwater now. That's the whole reason these communities disappeared. So we'll be diving, we'll be visually inspecting things. We might use metal detectors if we think that there are fasteners. I mean, just about everything back in the day here was made out of wood. It was the most abundant supply of building material. On the other hand, it rots, it floats away, it disappears. So sometimes we get lucky and there are artifacts, metal, ceramic, brick. There's any number of things that we might see if we look carefully enough and document where we find them.
The shallow water diving is a lot more difficult than the deeper water dives. It's because of the tremendous amount of boats that are on Lake St. Clair, and every time boats go by, it bounces you up and down. It also messes up the visibility of the water. But if we shoot enough days and we come over enough days when it's not so many boats out, then we get good footage. We're dealing with wind, we're dealing with rain, we're dealing with thousands of boats.
The search for the St. Felicity Church focuses on a location south of the Clinton River, near the old town of Belvedere. Around the bend, on the old shoreline, St. Felicity Church eludes discovery. The old church foundation, shown in this model, is thought to now be about 2,000 feet offshore in about 8 feet of water, and is the first site to be explored. The dive team launches from the Clinton River in search of the St. Felicity Church. The majority of the underwater area is very muddy from layers of silt collected over the years. The divers need to be very careful not to stir up the sediments in order to see clearly. Divers enter the water and search for signs of the historic remains of St. Felicity Church.
Growing up here in Macomb County and being a lifelong resident of Macomb County, I was not aware of all of this history. The earliest settlers on Lake St. Clair, I just have learned through this project who they were and about the town of Belvedere and St. Felicity and really what the history of the county is.
The divers meticulously search for signs of the old church foundation. Over the years, erosion, ice, and shifting sand may have erased all traces of its existence. While the divers search for remains of the old church, the lake hosts a variety of other recreational activities. As people utilize the water of Lake St. Clair for fun, the area's wildlife also makes use of the important region. Many of the local wildlife species make their home here.
Lake St. Clair offers boating, fishing, wildlife, and for me, the most exciting spot is Metro Beach.
The ecosystem is different in the Lake St. Clair marsh area from surrounding regions due to the lake effect. Warmer summers and longer falls make it a favorable choice as an agricultural spot.
Today we're at the Harson's Island Managed Waterfowl Hunting Area, which is a unit within the St. Clair Flats Wildlife Area, which is one of the largest freshwater deltas in the world, and is managed by the Department of Natural Resources. It's a giant wetland complex that we have the pleasure of operating. I love wetlands, I love the island. There's a whole list of things that make this place special and unique. But we're fortunate to have Lake St. Clair in our backyard, and world-class fishing opportunities, world-class hunting, the opportunity to trap, the opportunity to birdwatch, the opportunity to, get out and enjoy nature and get away from the hustle and bustle of things, but still only be an hour away from, Metro Detroit. We're just a ferry trip separated from some of the chaos of life.
During the spring, many varieties of wildlife migrate via the St. Clair marshes. One type is the sturgeon fish, a very old species having a prehistoric look to them. They can live to be 100 years old and weigh up to 1,000 pounds. It's an adventure to accompany a team from the DNR Lake St. Clair Fisheries Research Station to tag and research sturgeon in Lake St. Clair. The ship heads for the flats area where special fishing lines have been laid out. First step is to carefully pull in any fish that have been caught. A fish is taken out and examined and electronically scanned for an embedded tag from previous catches. After weighing the fish and finding no old tag, a new tag is inserted, and then the fish is released back into the lake. A tremendous variety of different fish species are caught in this angler's paradise.
On any given day while I'm out on my charters, I could be pursuing any one of the varieties of fish that we fish for on Lake St. Clair. And with that, because of my knowledge of the lake and the understanding of the fishery as a whole, I also use a number of different techniques, whether it be live bait or artificial bait, whether it be casting, drifting, or even trolling. All of those methods provide a very high level of success when you're in a given area that is known to produce great bites and also to be great for fishing throughout the whole entire year.
After searching for the old St. Felicity church site in the weedy, muddy bottom without much luck, attention is turned to the submerged town of Belvedere. Inflatable boats are used on these dives because of their ability to navigate in the shallow water. Because of the shallow depth of the water, a simple viewing device can be used to help detect any debris of the old remains of the town of Belvedere. A marker is dropped to aid in further investigation. The divers enter the water to examine the marked locations. Lots of possible artifacts are showing up. Metal objects can be found using underwater metal detectors. The divers also use motorized scooters to cover more territory in their exploration. After the surveys and hours of underwater searching, it is determined that more dives are necessary to fully reveal the extent of the ruins of the submerged town of Belvedere.
Diving in Lake St. Clair where the depth is no more than 17 feet, And most of the diving we're doing is in 5 and 6 feet, which is the old shoreline, the old beaches that we have an interest in. But it's a whole new challenge because with the water being more shallow, any wave action coming in from the hundreds of boats that are out on the lake, plus a little bit of wind, it really has been a challenge. But it's a matter of just like any of other filming, you just keep going back until you get the perfect day, and you keep working and make it come together.
The shipping industry created the need for dredging the channels deeper and deeper in Lake St. Clair. Deeper pathways were required to accommodate the increasing boat traffic. In the 1800s, the U.S. Congress spent $5,000 removing a troublesome sandbar from the mouth of the Clinton River.
What we've got here is a point kind of early on in the process of man working with or against nature in order to build a habitation, a place to work and live here on the shoreline.
As we know, the Great Lakes are very dynamic in their water levels, and as a result, Lake St. Clair is a relatively shallow lake, somewhere between the upper Great Lakes and the lower Great Lakes, and might change between 5.5 feet from the highest point to the lowest point. But what happened in 1855 is the U.S. and Canadian governments channelized the St. Clair River even wider to allow 2 ships to pass. And at that point, what happened is more water entered into Lake St. Clair and couldn't exit, so it permanently raised the mean value water level of Lake St. Clair, and that's partly the demise of these communities.
The building of lighthouses also played an important role in marking the channels and navigational hazards in the shipping industry. Lighthouses were established in 1855 to mark the South Channel, which was at the time the most navigable in the Flats area. The ruins still stand. The town of Mount Clemens is just up the Clinton River from Belvedere. Mount Clemens was rich with mineral water, discovered in 1865. The largest concentrated water minerals in the world at that time were located in Mount Clemens. People arrived to take baths to relieve all sorts of aches and pains.
In 1859, the Grand Trunk Railroad came through here, and that is what really opened the doors. They produced a lot of marketing materials, and one of the marketing materials they produced was this beautiful advertisement. It was a booklet. It had places to stay and described the mineral baths.
The remains of the old flooded town of Belvedere and the few artifacts from St. Felicity Church are just reminders of the many settlements that have existed over the years. This representation of local history is a treasure for future generations.
I'm very proud of representing Lake St. Clair. This area, its heritage is just remarkable. It's very well known for being one of the nation's greatest recreational boating and angling, fishing lakes.
What Lake St. Clair has done for Kevin Miller is put this smile right here, this smile that you see, every single time I come to Lake St. Clair. That's what it does for me. And it's real, it's genuine.
The Lake St. Clair area remains a beautiful and important reminder of our precious freshwater resources. Protecting these watery treasures is the responsibility of all that utilize these natural wonders.